X testing reflected one's overall control and potential of ability. X Wang Zheng's rollercoaster fluctuations had been a real change for Wang Zheng himself. Wang Zheng had always known that he would be enlightened in the 5 elements, but he needed the opportunity, or some planet with the 5 elements. But he had not thought to suddenly encounter both on Aslan, and also pull off his first 5 elements cycle. The waft of good feeling was indescribable. Mutually complementary and advancing. This was the real condition for primordial regression technique. Comprehensive and holistic mastery was a world of difference compared to the singular mastery of one. Metal and earth were only basic masteries, and far from earth rank. They could not even be used in any useful attacks in battle. But as a supplement, they were fearsome enough. As for this championship, Wang Zheng had gained another few points of confidence. Although these external figures counted for nothing, the real terror was inside. He had undergone significant metamorphosis this time around, and completed it even without realizing. Speaking of that, besides that old hag Kashawan, his luck with Aslan seemed pretty good. Wang Zheng's luck was not bad, but Yan Xiaoshu was in hot soup. The ups and downs of human life were just like that. The route from Tita Star to Maklu, if completed, would be a huge gold mine. They had already been allowed to proceed with mining, but had not found a professional miner. The problem was that the miners they had been in contact with all had unreasonable demands. There had been no news from Wang Zheng's side. Yan Xiaoshu really wanted to come to Leah Sphinx to try his luck. At least through Laurel's connection, they would definitely give him some face, wouldn't they? Leah Sphinx's governmental credibility was all in the Milky Way alliance. This was a natural attraction for businessmen. Those arriving at the venue were of increasing importance. At this moment, Laurel and Jasper were standing by Yan Xiaoshu's side, softly introducing those entering. Status, background, and some character analysis. Yan Xiaoshu smiled slightly. Laurel's card had been played beautifully. This was also the first time that Laurel had shown her true powers in front of him. He would not slight these soft introductions. After all, weren't they all bosses of big companies? But a close listen yielded details and secrets that ordinary people would not be privy to. The power of information could not be measured. Understanding one's character during negotiations, instead of going in blind, could make a world of difference in the direction of the discussions. Laurel was thorough. She might not know the depth of Yan Xiaoshu's character, but his ambition for advancing was clear to her. Only her sensitive instincts were telling her that there was something off about this fatty. Although he had delivered time and again, the risks were great. One slip-up could see everything of the past collapse. And that is the real stock controller of New Time Shipping, Zhou Lin. If he says the word, New Time Shipping will comply. They are also the most suitable partner for us at this point in time. Laurel welcomed everyone in. Walking up to Zhou Lin, she gave a familiar smile. Uncle Zhou. Oh, it's Laurel. I haven't seen you in a few days, and you're prettier already. And this is, Zhou Lin smiled, his gaze resting on Yan Xiaoshu. Uncle Zhou, let me introduce you. This is Yan Xiaoshu, the chairman of Titan Chamber of Commerce. This is Jasper from the Tadinger Group, and this is Gabra from Maka Republic's CK Group. Kiki, what a bunch of heroic youngsters. Laurel, is your father well? Thanks to you, my father's illness is much better, although he still needs rest and quiet. I've been too busy. Help me look after him. Uncle Zhou, this time too we have something on our minds. Zhou Lin raised a hand to cut off Laurel's opener. No rush. Let's get something to drink over there first. Clearly, he wanted to control the speaking dynamic. Negotiations were often a competition of patience. He was in the shipping business. When he heard of the Titan Group, he already knew what they wanted. Yan Xiaoshu smiled and nodded acquiesce as well. The fatty had already mastered his airs. His smile was firmly fixed in place, his expression unconcerned. After sitting down, Zhou Lin took his time getting to it. For you to come to me, it must be about the mining corridor route between Titan Star and Maklu, am I right? Hee, Laurel, you know that you've made a grave mistake and bitten off more than you can chew. The greatest problem for this route is not even the process in building, but in offending people. That's why, no matter who takes this project, they must demand sufficient profit. Are you willing to give that up? At this point, Zhou Lin paused with a smile. He exuded persuasive power. No financial magnate was a seat warmer. Zhou Lin had his own unique charm and persuasive power. Yan Xiaoshu smiled but did not comment. Uncle Zhou, we have invested heavily on this route. If we have no leadership position, we'll lose too much, Laurel said. Zhou Lin nodded with satisfaction. That's business. I don't know about the small shipping companies, but when we do things, we must have controlling interest. At least, it's usually a 30-year monopoly. After that, we can still retain 1/3. But from the way your preparations are going, it doesn't look like that will be the case. Jasper hastened to explain, this route is very special. A rare mineral corridor route. Even if it's more modest than the example, the profits are still very substantial, and we can guarantee stability. Stable profits held enormous attraction. Zhou Lin was unmoved. Stable is good, but overall, what we must pay and the risk we must undertake is not remunerated proportionally. You are not in the circle, and I'm afraid you are ignorant. This new route has already affected the current profits of other routes, and the risks are great. Yan Xiaoshu smiled slightly. Mr. Zhou, why don't you give us your terms? Kiki, everyone is straightforward. Half the stock for 50 years, and no lower, or I cannot answer to the board. Zhou Lin stretched out 5 fingers. He was asking for half straight away, and with no room for negotiation. Jasper looked at Laurel, who shook her head. She had expected that Zhou Lin's opening bid would be high, but who would have thought half? Yan Xiaoshu smiled. We will consider Mr. Zhou's terms seriously. Half from the get-go, and for 50 years, that was unreasonable. They could only place their hopes with others now. Zhou Lin smiled. You won't find better terms than mine. That's right. I forgot to ask. Does your Titan group have some kind of misunderstanding with Margate Interstellar Airline? They have long opened an offer. 80% for 50 years. Out of all that Zhou Lin had said, this last piece of information was the most serious. He was not the first to make the offer, but the other party. If he did not play by the rules, then how could he survive in this circle? Although the competition was intense, price wars were to be avoided. If both parties were battered, the fat prize would only fall to a third pair of hands. That he was only asking for half was already a show of respect. Margate Interstellar Airline, back then, they were an investor in the space program. But because they had set their sights on the controlling interest of the space program, they had been gradually removed. After which, there had been no news for a long while. Who would have thought that they would suddenly cause trouble now? But on second thought, that was normal. How could such a major company just lightly swallow their resentment? They had simply been biding their time. Kiki, old Zhou, I've been looking for you the whole day. What are you doing here? Just then, a portly man walked over. Haha, Fuller, it's never good news when you come knocking. Shoo shoo, let's go talk over there. Zhou Lin laughed and ushered him aside with no intention of introducing him. But Fuller had not really come to look for Zhou Lin. He looked over at Yan Xiaoshu. Kiki, let me introduce myself. Fuller from Margate Interstellar. This must be Yan Xiaoshu. Must be good to be young and carefree. I hear a new route is coming. Any problems? Need my help? After all, we had a working relationship before, right? Fuller's smile was warm and friendly, as though really concerned. Are we friends? Get your pudgy face out of mine. Yan Xiaoshu said mildly. He knew what the other guy was up to, and there was no need to waste time. This was not affected cooperation, but a blatant taunt. Who would have thought that Yan Xiaoshu would not even spare him courtesy? Fuller's face darkened, but he did not mind. That the boy had lost his cool spoke more about his lack of composure. Luckily, the government meeting had officially started, and everyone took their places. The content of the meeting focused on government announcements of economic plans, in the hopes of fostering better relationships with businessmen. At the same time, they announced the government's targets, purchases, and contracts in the new term. The meeting was not long, but each piece of news was momentous, and the business opportunity was great. Besides, an AA-grade government had trust, and everyone wished to have such a secure project. But Yan Xiaoshu and the rest did not have their hearts here. After the meeting, there would still be governmental invitationals, coming from all sorts of businesses and sorted by industry. They would talk in the hall, and shipping was also its own circle. Under Laurel's influence, Yan Xiaoshu came into contact with Leah Sphinx's shipping magnates, but without exception, the old foxes were fishing. They had already reached some sort of agreement. This shipping line was a hot potato. Anyone who undertook it would have to wear their agreements with the others. Of course, whether it was profitable enough was another thing, but what they asked for was like handing over their own success away. This was the world of investment. Perhaps Co Group had won much in the past, but if this was not handled well, then all their spent blood would not count for anything. Actually, Laurel felt that Yan Xiaoshu firstly needed to swallow his pride. That was a sign of attitude, and only with attitude could chances flourish. Of course, for this project to come this far, they had already entered a closed fight within the industry. They had thought too little of this. In business, knowing how to advance did not count for much. What mattered was when to retreat. Jasper and Gabra did not have much say on these matters. It was for Laurel and Yan Xiaoshu to decide. But there was something festering between them. Laurel did feel like those who had nothing to lose feared little, but once you had something, you should be more conservative to protect it. The tests at SIG did not end there. After Wang Zheng's scare, the second round of tests was about to begin. This one was the 5 Elements Forge. Lin Hong was the biggest supporter of SIG. As the head of the Royal College, he was concerned about the outcome. But any superpower had to have foresight. They could not let any opportunity pass them. And what could provide richer subject data than SIG? In the first round, Wang Zheng had produced a marvel. This was an exception that had never occurred before, and his potential was astounding. A pity that his other team members were quite lacking. The 5 Elements Forge was the second research direction which he supervised. It was mainly used to classify and evaluate Ability X quality. Actually, Elite Academy X had a similar way of doing things. For example, Di Maria had the highest quality of Ability X time. Time abilities were not as awesome at the start, and could not do godlike things like stop time, but in the future, it would always have unlimited potential. That was why Ability X quality was also something that the various countries took seriously. Everyone entered one by one. The quality test was not too structured. It was divided into 3 categories: high, middle, and low. Di Maria and the Aslan crowd unquestionably achieved high quality with ease. The top 20 team captains were all high quality, but student Wang again gave everyone a shock. He was low quality. This guy had not skived from the moment the examination had begun. How could the honest-to-goodness leader of Saruman Snake possess a low-quality Ability X? This meant that his Ability X was of normal flesh or related to one of the 5 basic elements. And such abilities were the most common and average, which naturally were evaluated as low quality. Even if they had power, and taken to a high level, it made others feel a lot better. This meant that their future growth would be better than Wang Zheng's. This guy could have his time now, but he would not achieve the same in the next phase. Lear was rated high quality. What was more surprising was Luo Fei. The fatty had also been rated high. That was a surprise. It seemed like this evaluation did not affect the result. If student Wang were eliminated here, it would be a joke. The first day of tests ended, and it felt easy. Such a level did not mean much to many of the experts. Aslan seemed to be more bark than bite. Even the IG of the past would not have let them pass so easily. Normally, they would immediately begin clashing, and it seemed like rest was the most important factor here. But this rest was within a strange space. What was Aslan smoking? Saruman Snake's members had huddled together. Something was not right. What do you think Aslan is trying to do this time? All that nonsense with the tests, and now they're actually giving us rest time. It seems scary, Zhang Shan said. No idea. Given Aslan's standards, it won't be so easy. Achilles shook his head slightly. Wang Zheng, looks like we're depending on you this time. Overall, in the Ability X test, no one besides Wang Zheng had entered the top 50, and the competition could not be described as intense. Overwhelming, more like. This time around, many of the warriors were mature and complete fighters. Without testing, they were just a name, but this test had basically reflected their level. Achilles, we are a team. And Ability X is just one aspect of battle power, and one that we're weak in, Wang Zheng dissented. What I'm worried about is that the leader and members will be separated after this, and we can't showcase our team's synergy. Achilles revealed his worries. If the members were eliminated, then it did not matter how strong Wang Jung was individually. This had also hit Wang Jung's greatest worry on the head, that he was not the one in charge of making the rules. The entire base was filled with unease. If they at least knew what to expect, then at least they could make some preparations. Being kept ignorant was the hardest. The top teams like Aslan and Arbiter were not worried. No matter what was thrown at them, they would manage. But the weaknesses of a team like Saruman Snake were all too obvious. If the rules targeted them, then they would really not shine. Currently on base, Aslan's Prime Minister, Kushawin, and Aslan's first princess, Aina, had finished watching the entire test from another room. This was not the point. Kushawin had no interest in the process, she only wanted to know the result, but bringing Aina out had another purpose. Aragorn, 23, Warrior Soul College. Son of the second biggest family on Arbiter, and also one of the faces of the younger generation of Arbiter. Their family's political inclinations are rather compatible with our future plans. Jondi Lilac, 25. Manalasuo College's leader, and his family's military influence on Manalasuo is astounding. Currently, there are more than 10 generals there. Her meaning was clear. Aina had already reached matchmaking age. No talk of freedom. This was the duty of the Aslan Empire's princess. Each generation had political marriages, even if the choices were increasing. At present, internal politics were stable. If Aina refused to make a local choice, then she had to find a foreigner. Whether it was Arbiter or Manalasuo, it would be of prodigious use to Aslan. Both are excellent, but not perfect. Dina Atlas, Aslan royalty. I find this one not bad, Kushawin said. Because Aina was clever, Kushawin did not need to embellish. All three could be chosen. Arbiter's choice was most favorable to Aslan at present, but the Atlanteans had treated Aina better. From a political standpoint, Aslan and Atlantis were already past the point of war, and there was no need to fortify it any further. Kushawin had started such a large-scale task, even affecting Sig, just to let Aina make her decision. She was of age, and could not put off her choice forever. Avoiding was not an option. Her phase of stubbornness was over, and it was time to fulfill a princess's duty. And, may I have some time to consider? Aina's expression was impassive. You may. Aina, I'm not forcing you. We royals have no choice. It is not just you. We and is the same. All men and women of the Aslan imperial family have to make a choice, Kushawin said. At this time, she had hardened her heart. For such a long time, she was sure that Aina had come to her own understanding. Whether things worked out or not, Aina had to bring good news to the short-term national plans, and marriage was undoubtedly the best. The princess's other half was very important. Even if it was just a gesture, it would bring about a huge effect if released at the right moment. Kushawin left, leaving Aina pondering alone. Bringing Aina out was to prevent her from running away. She had been running for a long time now, but she could not hide forever. Aina's gaze locked on the screen, her emotionless expression suddenly warmed. Wang Jung. She had delayed as long as she could. She had given Wang Jung as much time to grow as she could. Now was the time to make her decision. Ever since she had that handshake with Wang Jung, she had thought of this. To beat them at their own game, and to face the urging of the royal family. And now she could delay no longer. She even suspected that Kushawin had seen through her, but had not exposed her. She was forcing her to declare it this time. After brooding for a while, Aina finally sent a Skylink message that would never be forgotten. I must be married. Do you dare to win my hand? Ding dong. The Milky Way Alliance's House of Representatives election, held every 5 years, was imminent. Aslan had always occupied the most seats, and the number of seats guaranteed Aslan's foundational future for its plans in the next 5 years. Only, Kushawin was not satisfied with the current situation. She hoped to progress even further. But the Arbiter competition, as well as Manalasuo's brainless hounding, were problems that Aslan had to deal with. As for the other federations, they did not have as much ambition, and were easily shaken off. That was why Aina represented an important link in the process. This was unquestionably bait, and she could not hide it, but even so, she had to take it. After all, even fish escape the hook sometimes. It was hard to say who would come out ahead. Arbiter Soulless Battle Team. Captain Aragorn, You're saying that Princess Aina favors you? The soulless battle team members were stunned. No matter how stoic the arbiters were, they were all excited to hear this news. Arbiter men did not always like arbiter women. In their bones, they liked Aslan types, and Aina was undoubtedly the most beautiful princess in the world, if. Aragorn's mouth twitched. The Aslan men are too effeminate. That's the news from the royal family. The family has already confirmed it. That's why it has to be me, this Sig. Whoever stands in my way will be killed. The moment Aragorn had received his family's recognition, he knew this was fixed. Although from the start he had not really believed it, the word of the Aslan royal family was still trustworthy. Perhaps they would raise other conditions, but for the Jewel of Aslan, Princess Aina, any price could be paid. The other matters are political. To me, taking the greatest king this Sig will be a present for Her Highness. Aragorn was filled with confidence and pride. All of you remember that. This is not just glory for our soulless battle team, but also for the whole of Arbiter Republic. In the battles to come, I leave no restriction on your methods, as long as we win. Yes, sir. Although they were not the lucky recipients, if leader Aragorn could win Princess Aina's hand, then that was the greatest honor for Arbiter. The Sig championship was simply a present, and one that had to be obtained. Manalasuo Golden Wheel Battle Team. Leader, you wouldn't be pulling our leg, would you? God, Captain. If you can do this, then our Manalasuo would really be awesome. Jondi Lilac smiled slightly. The news from the royal family cannot be wrong, but the Aslan agenda invites speculation. It must be because of the Milky Way Alliance elections in 3 months' time. Our Manalasuo has always been their greatest sniper. Perhaps they're changing their methods. Captain, if they're really sincere, then who cares even if Manalasuo and Aslan become a federation? That's Princess Aina. Captain, we support you. We'll obliterate anybody who dares to go up against us. All the team members were fired up. That's right, no matter what Aslan is trying to do, if I can get Princess Aina, it'll be worth it. Leader, could they be just bluffing, and then we'll retract the offer later? Of course it's possible. That's Princess Aina. But if word gets out, there's always a way to prevent them from retracting, as long as we are strong enough. Jondi said. He had used "we" to mean Sig. This was something that he could not accomplish alone, but he trusted his teammates. These were the elites of Manalasuo. New blood like Vincent could not hope to hold a candle to them. Leader, rest assured that we will fight to the death. This Sig is definitely ours. Although there were no clear prerequisites, everyone knew that if you wanted to wed the princess, you had to win Sig, or what dignity would you have? Nobody was a fool, and the families understood as well, only, this bait was too big. At the same time, it was a huge opportunity. Whether they could take it depended on their capability, and after all, Princess Aina had to marry somebody, and they were all suitable. As for why the choice had not come from within Aslan, the families were clear as well. It seemed like many of the Aslan braves and hunks had been turned down by the princess, and this caused them to turn their sights abroad. This year, it might be raining pizza, but if you wanted it, you would have to snatch it. As for this opportunity, no one could pass up on it. It could be said that you had to take the championship by hook or by crook. Any in your way, die. Atlantis Sea Queen Battle Team. Dina Atlas had received news from the temple as well. Dina smiled slightly. Although the temple had not said too much, they were clearly hoping that this could be profited from. Atlanteans were not as passionate as humans about marital affairs. Much was decided by their god, and they believed in fate. But for the country, Atlanteans did not mind marriage, especially a perfect being like Her Highness Aina. Even the Atlantean nobility accorded them respect. After all, Her Highness was chosen by the gods. Atlanteans were not as passionate as humans, but this matter had incensed Dina's fighting spirit. In the Milky Way Alliance of today, Atlantis and Aslan were a match made in heaven. If they could strengthen their alliance a step further, that would be excellent. Atlanteans were very disposed towards Princess Aina, but they also knew that there were competitors. The princess's other half must be excellent. That was expected. But in truth, if the Atlanteans were to go hard, there was not much competition. And similarly, for Wang Zheng, this was a sleepless night. He had to make a decision. The next day, the various major teams gathered. The competition qualifiers were about to enter the second phase. This would eliminate another 50 teams. The one who appeared on stage was actually Prime Minister Kushawin. Everyone also looked at her with respect. Who was the most respected man in the world? It was hard to determine. Each region and country had their own candidate. But for women, the woman called Kushawin had always been the most authoritative in the last 2 decades. She had ruled Aslan for 20 years, and maintained Aslan's fast development. Her influence had spread to every corner of the Milky Way alliance. She had brought Aslan to the pinnacle, and countless media sources reported on her. She was on the front page of every country's newspapers every day. Her one sentence could change a country's fate. This was someone who truly wielded the pinnacle of power. No matter whether Aslan, or those against them, this was a competition, and all could feel the awesome aura of this woman. She was the strongest ruler of the strongest empire in the Milky Way alliance, Kushawin Aslan. Kushawin paused, her gaze sweeping over the arena. These arrogant and obstinate youngsters. Perhaps in the decades to come, they would represent their countries, and perhaps they would one day rule the world. But in her eyes, they were all brats. The venue was silent. Reputation was important, and the fact that Kushawin could make it this far was no false reputation. Now, this world is mine. It is also yours. Egoistic. Very egoistic. Because the first half was heavy, and then the next half was light. But nobody disputed it. Because what she said was the truth, and her words had already incited their ambition. But in the future, it will definitely be one of you. This SIG is your first stepping stone towards the pinnacle of your life. Here, there are no nationalities, no tribes, only your dreams as a warrior. A soldier who does not dream of being general is not a good soldier. I believe the truth of that phrase. Perhaps in other professions you may cower or become obsessed, but for you all, no. You are warriors. You are the first and last line of defense that the Milky Way Alliance has. I hope that in the near future, I can personally crown the best team among you champion. Kushawin's voice rang, and the whole venue burst into rapturous applause. This was the great Kushawin. Just as she said, one sentence from her could rouse all the little children below. As for Soulless Battle Team, Sea Queen Battle Team, Golden Wheel Battle Team, they were even more stoked. For their captain, for their country's glory, no one would stop them. The generals were watching on as well, with different expressions. Kushawin traversed the Milky Way alliance not solely on the power of Aslan, but also on her ability to flit and capitalize on the situation like no other. She could make friend and foe stand with her, and the nickname of Iron Fist Prime Minister had thence come. Kushawin smiled slightly, and gestured for silence. The crowd immediately hushed. I think that everybody knows Aslan has a beautiful princess. I wonder if you think me arrogant for saying so? Everyone laughed. Aslan's members smiled. Self-praise? This was far from enough. Her beauty transcended words. She was a goddess, the goddess that every Aslan warrior would die to protect. Our princess does not like cosmetics, but conflict. She will give her full attention to this SIG. Hopefully, she can find her match. I think the most eminent of young men are here, and there surely will be one for her. Immediately, every male gave off an uncontrollable and horrifying aura. What did this mean? It meant that Her Highness was looking for her other half here at SIG. A fire raged uncontrollably in any who dared to call themselves a man. From ancient times, the matrimonial night and graduation were seen as the most glorious events in one's life. That was nothing compared to what was dangled before their very eyes. If SIG was only for a warrior's glory and the thirst for victory, then now everyone had turned into beasts. And the members from Aslan's 3 teams were even more aggressive now. Even if they died, they would not let the princess marry anyone outside of Aslan. They did not know why the Prime Minister had chosen this course of action, but as Aslan people, they would rather die than see the princess marry a foreigner. This would be the greatest shame of the Aslan Empire. Protect the princess unto death. Kushawin knew that this would happen. The first step would be to lay a deep brand of Aslan into their hearts. In truth, there were not many who were qualified to participate, but the impact hit all of them. They would never forget it. Even those who lost would have the hunger. A hunger for Aslan would always exist in their hearts. From that moment on, Aslan would reach a new level of unattainability. Just as everyone was digesting Kushawin's words, A hand was raised in the crowd. Its position was relatively forward, and could not be ignored. The crowd hushed, and Kashawin's eyes flashed. She gave a small nod. Prime Minister Kashawin, I am Wang Jung, from Earth. I have a question, Wang Jung said. His voice was clear, and even without any amplification, the entire venue heard him. Wang Jung's name was not unknown, but no one thought he would raise a query. Kashawin smiled slightly. I know you. Elite Academy X's greatest king, and one of the faces of the Milky Way Alliance's younger generation. Instantly, looks changed. More than half of the gazes had darkened with hate. Wang Jung knew that this was Kashawin's club. Blatant painting of him as a target. But compared to what he was about to do, that was nothing. What if the girl you like asks you if you dare to fight for her, if you would fight for her? In that instant, Wang Jung knew what he had to do. Aina would not say that to him unless she had no other choice. Intellect? Consideration? Look before you leap? All that was bullshit. If he cowed here, was he even a man? Was he even a human? All he had worked for, strived for, was for this moment. Only, Wang Jung knew that going up against Kashawin was going to take more than bravery. Prime Minister Kashawin, I admire the princess. I wish to know if the royal family would mind that I am not an Aslan person, not a noble, and just a commoner. I think this is something that everyone wishes to know. Wang Jung's every word described his biggest problem. Since Kashawin had given him a chance, then he would force her to stand by it. In truth, Kashawin had not expected Wang Jung to have such guts. But on this occasion, after her rousing speech, if she denied it, she would be made a laughingstock. Aslan would also become a joke. Kashawin's smile was brilliant. We of the royal family do not care about these things. I had thought such antiquated ways of thinking long vanished since the interstellar age of humanity. How could youngsters be so backward? Kashawin hemmed and hawed, trying to deflect the topic, but Wang Jung interrupted Kashawin. Prime Minister Kashawin is indeed as the legends say. If someone cannot even take the championship at SIG, then they are not fit to be with the princess. Even if Kashawin would stop him and Aina, Wang Jung's bottom line was to ruin Kashawin's plan. Kashawin was obviously cognizant of his petty intentions. She smiled. Wang Jung, do you think you can take the championship? Who did he think Kashawin was? If Wang Jung checked her, then she would checkmate him in one move. If Wang Jung backed down, then Aina was listening, but if Wang Jung dared to commit, then he would offend everyone present. Saruman's snake was not invincible. No one in this world had ever made it out of an angry mob unscathed. Wang Jung stared at Kashawin, who stared back. It was not the first time they had met eye to eye. A different place, at a different time. I am here to conquer. In that instant, Wang Jung was no longer looking for a way out. It did not exist. As long as one lived and breathed, one would have to make choices. If Aina had forgotten him, so be it. But he would rather die than watch Aina married to someone else in front of his eyes. Suddenly, he understood. He had worked so hard, from when he first had his dream, till now, all of it was to become the man who could deserve Aina's love. If he had to fight, that was the fight, even if it was impossible. Following, the committee announced the test results. The rules had already been announced, so everyone was filled with a different fervor. The respective members and teams were split up and transported to subsidiary satellite stars. These were basically small stars that were mostly covered by sea. Their conditions were harsh, and the seawater toxic. Only a few islands remained, and they became natural, large-scale experiment grounds, especially closed-door experiments. They had been dropped on 2 Zerg islands. Cyborg Zoids. They were perfect amalgamations of biological and robotic technology, and possessed terrifying battle power. It was said that these Zergs had already been released into the Abyss battlefield, and the Milky Way Alliance had requested Aslan's aid. But such tools of war had been heavily limited within a boundary. If it were not an Abyss problem, then such Zergs would never be allowed to be deployed. All the cyborg Zergs fighting modes have been set to B grade, Colonel Cotello said. These Zergs were designated with 2 fighting modes. One was B grade, which was normal attack patterns, and was natural for Zergs. The other was A grade, a berserk mode, which was a mechanically driven slaying. Although they had been strengthened, but they were not Abyss Zergs. If they were not set to A grade, then they did not pose much of a danger to these experts. Of course, everyone present knew that the Zergs were not the real opponents. In your packs are 3 days of rations, 1 titanium blade, 1 laser gun. Each person has a tag. Seeded team leader tags are worth 2 points. Seeded team members are worth 2 points. All other teams are worth 1 point. First to 5 points wins their way free. Catello paused. Losing your tag, dying, or surrendering result in elimination. Leader elimination disqualifies the team. All teams will be ranked in the end. The main competition only needs 64 teams, no more, no less. Everyone present was handed a military bag. At the same time, each person's arm was fitted with a bracelet. Your bracelets are emergency equipment. If you are about to die or if you surrender, trigger the shield symbol on the bracelet. At that time, you will give up on the competition. Perhaps you have already felt it, but this bracelet restricts ability X. Unless you have an A rank ability, you won't be able to use ability X. Catello's expression was amused. Any Aslan person would not be disposed towards anyone looking to win the princess. No matter who he was, he had to be from Aslan, or he would not do. The Saruman Snake Battle team's skill level aside, Wang Zheng was unquestionably strong. He had single-handedly taken down 2 Earth rank pros in the Greatest King competition. His ferocious wind, fire, ice combination ability had seared its way into public memory. Perhaps there were imbalances in the Saruman Snake Battle team, but no one present dared to snub or underestimate Wang Zheng. The fundamental 5 affinities ability X was seen as weak, but at Earth rank, they were strong. If one could master hybrid abilities, then it would be switching a bird rifle for a cannon. In a straight-up fight, such a person was extremely terrifying. But without ability X, many present smiled carelessly. All captains board plane 1. All other members board planes 2, 3, 4, and 5. Leaving immediately. Good luck, Catello hollered. Just then, everyone's bracelets shimmered red, as though something had pierced their arms. Wang Zheng was not at all unfamiliar with the sensation. At Maklu, he had had his fill of it. Only, the Aslan product was of a higher quality. In an era where ability X was growing stronger, there were all kinds of misuse and criminal activity. Subduing these people was a bother, and then difficult to deal with. Ability X bracelets were necessary. Of course, these things had a much wider purpose and usage when Aslan made them. Wang Zheng did not need to see. He could feel the malicious glares behind him. Kashan had successfully nudged him towards the cliff, and he did not doubt at all that the Aslan people wanted to kill him. Everyone had already signed the waiver pre-competition, and this was the truth of SIG. It was like a special forces competition in the military. Only death could separate the winners from the losers. The cabin was silent. This spaceship was full of the leaders of the major teams. Seeded teams were just a name. Mars and the rest similarly had the ability to enter the top 10, and the top 30 teams were all roughly evenly matched. Seeded teams were just magnets for enmity. Finishing off a seeded team was as good as 2 normal ones. The difficulty would give others pause, while those ranked 11 to 30 would come out ahead with little risk. Such a format would never appear at IG, but this was SIG. And Wang Zheng was basically a beacon. Most importantly, his awesome ability X was gone. Points, reputation, and the hate that he had received from his clash with Kashan. Wang Zheng had to take care now. Failure aside, he might not even survive this. In truth, the one that Wang Zheng was most worried about was not himself. He was a man, and perhaps dying on the sandy battlefield for his woman was a little silly. But he did not regret it. Only, he was afraid that he had landed the Saruman Snake Battle team in trouble. Lin Feng, Jondi Lilac, and the rest had already given their team orders. They would not allow Saruman Snake's members to leave this island. Even without them saying, their members knew what to do. On the battlefield, not even Aslan or Arbiter dared to flex. And now an Earthling had dared to raise himself up. That was asking for it. Was the Aslan princess someone that just anybody could covet after? He really made himself food now. On the other side, Zhongshan and the rest were feeling some heavy enmity on the transport carrier. Perhaps the leader side was a little more reserved. There was no need to show it. But here with the members, they did not need to conceal it. Dropping was random, and many would remember where Saruman's snake had dropped. The hate aside, each of their tags was worth 2 points. And that Zhang Shan, for example, his greatest ability was translocation. After his ability X was shut down, he was a sitting duck. Free points, take and win. Everyone would dearly love to sit beside Zhang Shan, and jump off with him. Some felt that this bunch was rather pitiful, to be saddled with such a captain. To dare to stand out on such an occasion was asking for it. Zhang Shan and the rest knew that Wang Zheng did startling things, but they had underestimated his guts. This guy was born to take on the world. Seeing the hostile glances all around, Zhang Shan was hyped. Damn, this was thrilling. He had never been the center of so much attention before. Finally, he was going to be the hero. Perhaps Achilles and Lai Xin, in the past, would not have approved. But having been through so much, the Saruman Snake Battle team was a cohesive whole now. If Wang Zheng had not done that, he would not be Wang Zheng. This kid was not that smart, at times. As a woman, and a woman that admired Wang Zheng, Lai Xin was in full support. If Wang Zheng had not done so, and seen the woman of his heart be snatched by others, then in Lai Xin's terms, he could FCK off and die. But given the current situation, Saruman Snake's members were prepared now. Forget about taking tags, they might not even be able to protect their own tags. These people were stirred up. Wang Zheng has said so as well. Don't get ahead of yourselves. If there is danger, surrender. The mountain is green, and firewood aplenty, Achilles quoted. Some things still had to be said. They really had to keep their heads down now. They would receive no mercy. The rest nodded. The atmosphere in the cabin was extremely stifling. At the Royal College, once everyone boarded the planes, the 4 girls were also shocked. Oh, if there was a guy who dared to do that for me, I would marry him, Qian Shuidi exclaimed. In all these years of my life, I have never seen anyone who dared to talk to the Prime Minister like that. Kashan was not only influential in the Milky Way alliance, but her threat within Aslan was even more severe. I really did not expect Wang Zheng to go so hard. It's really not smart, equivalent to digging his own grave. Must be Her Highness Aina who told him, Ouyang Ruoliu said. She had also suspected that their love had been interfered with by the royal family. That was normal, but perhaps counterproductive and excessive. If the royal family had not intervened, their interest might have waned, but the more they blocked it, the more intense it grew. Too naive. Dong looks like he won't be able to finish the agreement with you. The situation was obvious to see. Forget the fighters, even she could feel that something wrong with the situation. This was the crowd mentality, and she had suspected this was Kashan's hand as well. Why would they have to limit ability X? That was Wang Zheng's greatest support. Without it, they could simply wear him out. The worst thing was that he would be alone and without support. All of the competition members were about to arrive. The observers had already taken off as well. Kashan was not so free. Of course, she would not really let Aina watch such a bloody scene. Kashan already suspected that Aina had remembered something. That was not important. This was basically a multiple-choice question. If Aina said nothing, then everything would proceed as normal. It would be normal for Wang Zheng to not stand out either. She had no ability to deal with a kid. If Aina remembered, and Wang Zheng was tactful, then she would not care. People were not cold-blooded. The third choice, which was the worst option. Aina said it, and Wang Zheng did it. She would not be merciful in that case. The Aslan Empire was vast, and each step had to be carefully considered. She had never killed anyone, but throughout the course of the Empire's development, there had been too many sacrifices to count. More accurately, every country was like that. Wang Zheng had made the childish choice. Before, she had thought Wang Zheng had his wits, but a pity that he could not pass this hurdle. And to Wang Zheng, his best course of action now would be to find a safe opportunity to surrender. Losing was better than dying. Of course, Kashan also knew that Wang Zheng would not surrender easily. From the first day she laid eyes on him, this boy had really grown. A pity that reality had brought him to his knees. Ability X bracelets were indeed on the agenda, but not in this round. Kashan had merely brought it forward. The mightiest people in this world were not fighters, but those who set the rules. Aina, let's head back. Wang Jung is quite brave. If he can emerge from these circumstances, then he is just about qualified to talk to a princess. Kashan smiled slightly. Aina mirrored her smile. It's just wonderful that the Prime Minister thinks so as well. You seem very confident, Kashan noted. Aina was no longer the child of yesterday. She had matured, and it was a game between them, one played along the rules of the Queen's line. She would see Aina humbled, and to do so, she would have to play by some rules. Aina was in the same boat. She could not act with impunity. Neither could bear the consequences of careless actions. I have always had confidence in him. The biggest difference for Aina was that in the past, she could only back off to buy Wang Jung's safety. Now, even though she was fighting from behind, Kashan could no longer afford to be careless either. Then we'll see. Getting first place in SIG is not as easy as you imagine. Kashan smiled warmly. I see you're still energetic. We still have many things to do. Kashan's smile still held a hint of exasperation. She liked Aina's fighting spirit. She was a future queen. Rebelliousness was the first step, and a good sign. But she still needed to be honed. She had poor taste. Many thought that Wang Jung was an elite fighter. Even if he was not the strongest, he was one of them. But that was just because they had yet to see stronger. One's horizon determined one's life. Only those at Kashan's level could control the Milky Way Alliance, this inconceivably prosperous world that humans had built, and all kinds of top-level powers and secrets. But anybody at this level could not let it go easily. Power was the greatest vanity in this world. Once attracted, it could not be shaken off. One by one, figures were dispatched from the air. It was different from dropping normal soldiers and squads. Here, there was no fear, only excitement. The freedom of the air was thrilling to these mighty soldiers. The two islands were extremely big. Human constructions were concealed in dense forests. There was no risk to the laboratories present. Out of all the experimental grounds in the world, only Aslan had no incidents in the last 2 decades. Wang Jung had already landed. Given his flying speed, there would definitely be enemies within a few 100-meter radius. Checking through his things, he felt the Ability X bracelet's inhibitive ability. Wang Jung knew that this quality must be the best, so there was no need to test it. There had been many tests this month, and he liked these battles. If anyone wanted to go, come at him. The laser gun hanging on his waist, and the titanium blade sheathed in his boot, he shouldered the pack, and with a flash, Wang Jung disappeared into the thick forest. Did the participating captains act alone? The exact opposite. Survival tasks were the norm for special troopers. In this process, alliances were necessary. In all kinds of competitions, many were already familiar, and Wang Jung was also that way. Moreover, those from other countries had known each other since Junior Ability X class, and all kinds of other factors had firmed up their circles and networks. In such a situation, strong alliances were the key to securing the win. Those who simply pursued power alone and tested themselves did not survive. People always looked for the easy way out. Strong alliances were extremely terrifying. Basically, when they jumped, they had already arranged the sequence. Those within a few 100 meters could easily meet up. Even if they could not use Ability X, their physical prowess and scouting experience were extremely proficient. Manalasuo's Jondi Lilac, Leah Sphinx's Chichin Nakai, Hail Cloud Alliance's I Jungyang. The three were huddled together. This lineup was rare in the leader tier. If the three of them joined hands, they would bring death on any they met. Jondi, I received news that the Aslan imperial family is very interested in you. You had best perform well. Chichin Nakai smiled. If we meet Wang Jung, I'll leave him to you. Jungyang, what do you say? I Jungyang's beautiful face was still cold. I don't like that guy. Oh, but I know that he's pretty chummy with I Xiaolu, Chichin said. Kill. This also ticked off I Jungyang. He would not interfere in family business. I Xiaolu had acquitted herself well. His younger sister was smart, but smart girls were often muddled in matters of the heart. If Wang Jung liked Xiaolu, there would be no issue. he would definitely stand with Wang Zheng. But clearly, Wang Zheng liked Ana. Which meant he was playing Ai Xiaolu. And this grated Ai Zhengyang. As an involved party, Jondi smiled. No rush. Wang Zheng's business can be let alone for a while. This is a very interesting hunt. Since we're here, let's play. We'll collect tags first and then watch the show. Even if we don't make a move, many are anxious to do so. There were at least 3 on the Imperial watch list, and they could not hide. Nobody was a fool. But since Aslan had put a princess on the line, they would also show some sincerity. No matter who gained in the end, that would remain to be fought over. But Jondi was in no hurry. Kashan seems to have played a good hand. But she forgot something. Now, I'm afraid that the most anxious are Di Maria, Lin Feng, and Chenkinzade, Qichin said. Jondi smirked as well. So let them go first. You've seen Wang Zheng's power. Even without ability X, his physical technique is not bad at all. Good is good, but he's too reckless. He won't return this time. I think 3 days. He should be able to hold out for 3 days, so we must complete our mission within then. If someone else claims his head, you won't look good either, Qichin said. Reasonable. I'll remember this favor. Jondi nodded gravely. When it was time to compete, compete. When it was time to cooperate, cooperate. Jondi and Ai Zhengyang were very clear that at their level, they had to be even more conscious of which was which. This world did not belong to a solo berserker. Those types never ended well. Never. All 3 lazily faded into the jungle. The hunt had begun, and there was nothing to fear. When these 3 were together, the rest could only circle. All they needed to do was hunt. Just as Jondi and the rest predicted, Lin Feng, Chenkinzade, and Di Maria had already converged. All 3 had been disciplined, so they held their cool back then. Wang Zheng's actions disgraced the princess. That damned kid actually dared to covet the princess. There was only one outcome. Death. Out of the 3, Lin Feng was the tallest and also the oldest. If not for Wang Zheng, there would be no need for them to meet. After all, this was Aslan's homeground, and they were confident. But now, they had to finish Wang Zheng off first. Although they were both from Elite Academy X, Di Maria held not a single whit of goodwill towards Wang Zheng. He wanted to finish him off before, and all the more now. You've faced him before. How are his physical skills? Lin Feng directed the question to Di Maria calmly. Very good. The solar system people are indeed exceptional in physical techniques, but it's all flesh and steel, Di Maria said. This opportunity was extremely rare. Losing to Arbiter, so be it. But losing to Wang Zheng was the real disgrace. And Wang Zheng's feelings for the princess had deepened his hate beyond bounds. Although the best choice is to let others wear him out first, I can't take it anymore. If we find him, we'll finish him first. Chenkinzade coldly said. His mental state was not as impulsive as Di Maria's. Inside, he kept his cool. Finishing off Wang Zheng first seemed very difficult, but it was for the purpose of keeping Aslan's dominant position at SIG, which actively contested for the top. The mighty had no need to look behind themselves. All 3 exchanged looks. As though reaching a common understanding, they left with speed. Both islands were fairly near, perhaps 100 nautical miles apart. The leader's island was slightly smaller, while the member's island was slightly larger. Dropping a few hundred people down had not raised as much as a ripple. Because the leaders were solo, there were not many arrangements. But the members' side had been scrambled up. To the Saruman Snake Battle team, this was not good news. Especially for a big sod like Mu Gen, who made a big target. The 2-point tags were definitely number 1 hunting priority on the island. The moment they landed, Zhongshan hit the road. Damn, not running would be pig-headed. Sealing his ability X was the greatest blow to him. With translocation and his intellect, catching him would have been impossible. Perhaps he could not snatch tags, but protecting his own was not a problem. But now, he and Mu Gen were just food. Zhongshan's physical skills had improved by leaps and bounds, but he did not have much confidence here. The bloodthirst emanating from Arbiter and Aslan's teams was just too dangerous. First, he had to wait for dark. Once it was dark, there would be opportunities. On this battlefield, he had to stay alert, and crush them by outwitting them. The one who survived till the end was never the strongest, but the smartest. Zhang Shan began to hypnotize himself. That was necessary in this place. Saruman's snake was definitely target number 1. But only those teams in the top 50 dared to aim for it. Average teams had best look to their own survival and pick up the scraps. Mu Zhen was clear of his own situation. Tita giants liked such battlefields. It was like a survival game that Tita Star held annually. This was their favorite. His battles with the tribe were all in similar circumstances, with him as the target. It was just a different venue and different opponents. The enemies were strong. That much Mu Zhen could feel. He knew that this was a fight for Ada. Forests were not suited to giants, especially against agile human fighters. That was why Mu Zhen legged it for the seaside the moment he landed. He knew he had to find a wide, open space. And at least there was one thing he did not need to worry about. His teammates. All he could do was wait for his teammates to find him. This was the giant advantage. Their advantage was strength. Without ability X, he was even more well-positioned. The drawback was that he could not conceal himself. After all, this was not a one-on-one. More accurately, the rules were not the Tita people's rules. Such a challenge filled Mu Zhen's heart with strength and excitement. A giant moving through the jungle at high speed was exceptionally agile. That's right, the primitive nature of the terrain felt like home. When he reached the seaside, Mu Zhen already held a whole bunch of stakes in his hands. A pity that Mu Zhen seemed to have forgotten one thing. Humans did not always rely on steel. They would not expend unnecessary energy on matters that could be resolved by a gun. Night slowly descended. The members on Island B had already begun clashing, and more than 10 were out. Whereas for the leaders on Island A, it was still quiet. Those qualified to be leaders at the main competition were close to Earth rank, even if they were not. Their ability X's were all at B rank, and the difference was in their mastery and ability type. And that meant that the slightest mistake would be punished. Wang Zheng did not go too far, because it did not really matter to him where he went. He did not intend to hide. Anybody but him could hide. And he would not, because most importantly, he did not want to hide. It was time to make a stand. Wang Zheng had chosen a good place. He had cleared the surroundings and raised a campfire. In this place at this time, such actions seemed to be asking for death, but Wang Zheng had done it. He ate something. Food had never been a problem for Wang Zheng. His appetite was excellent. If Zergs were attracted to his firelight, they would make good food as well. But he hoped that Aslan had not used mechanical oil in their modifications, or it would be a waste of food. In emergencies, the trees around were always edible. His surroundings were quiet. Charcoal appeared without a sound. Your actions are not prudent. But your attitude is exceptionally admirable, Charcoal said. Wang Zheng smiled, but did not answer. This is not logical. If you can endure to the end, perhaps you have a chance to enter the third tier of the primordial regression technique. I can feel it. At least half the people here practice the arts, Charcoal continued. Wang Zheng did not mind it. He had made this move fearlessly. Let the challenges rage on more intensely. No matter whether Bonehead had initially wanted to make him a fighter, killer, or war machine, that training had allowed him to reach this instant filled with calm and power. This did not mean that Charcoal was wrong, only that Wang Zheng did not walk Bonehead's road, nor Charcoal's road. He walked his own path. His strength came from a girl called Aina. That girl had fallen in love with a good-for-nothing boy, and borne it all. It was now his turn to protect her. His surroundings were still silent. He did not feel the Zergs, let alone anything else, but Charcoal gradually disappeared. Because somebody was coming, and more than one somebody. Wang Zheng did not mind it. The leader's skill level was not to be underestimated. Invincible. Everybody died, and in truth, staying in Wang Zheng's position required assertiveness. This was called fighting harder with your back to a wall. Clear footsteps rang out. Wang Zheng gathered his focus. From this instant on, his attention would not wander. As for his opponent, Wang Zheng believed in them. The first up was not from Aslan. If it were, they would not be sneaking about. And there were perhaps 10 more people hidden in the area. Regardless, the first one up was brave. Wang Zheng stoked his campfire and gently massaged his bracelet. He then looked up. Name. Northern Star Battle Team Captain, Zhang Zun. I look forward to your lesson. Zhang Zun's face was the picture of seriousness. The first one up was not here to kill him, an admirer. Nothing wrong with that. Northern Star was not weak. Within the top 128 teams, they might be ranked about 70. To break through would be extremely difficult, and, most crucially, his members had encountered difficulties in the qualifiers. They were basically doomed in this competition, which was why he had come here to fulfill his dream. Wang Zheng could clearly tell the difference between sincerity and bloodthirst. Only, at such a tense moment, even the sincerity seemed especially dangerous. This person was not a bystander, he might turn on him at any time. Wang Zheng sketched a gesture of welcome. Zhang Zun shrugged off his shirt, revealing a solidly built body. With a roar, his flesh suddenly began to swell. A powerful aura swept out. Ability X. There was some doubt in the forest. But that was not the case. Wang Zheng could feel that this power stemmed from within, rather than borrowed the energy of the world. Within Zhang Zun's frame was an energy field, which surprised him. This had to be one of the ancient art practitioners that Charcoal was just talking about. Heaven-raising iron body, Zhang Zun. Boom! With a step, the earth shook and dust exploded. Zhang Zun flew towards Wang Zheng with murderous intent. Boom! Zhang Zun was stunned, and those watching from the shadows were stunned as well. Zhang Zun had landed a blow right square on Wang Zheng's face with a solid delivery. Wang Zheng's leg fainted, and Zhang Zun hastily backflipped twice to dodge it. Wang Zheng rubbed his face and rolled his neck. Having no feeling of pain was indeed a very troublesome thing. He had to enter the stage. Pain could help him react faster and more alertly. Although he had no feeling, that had awakened his memory. Looks like your constitution is suited to the defensive tank type. If you can endure one punch from me, you win. Wang Zheng said. Zhang Zun was stunned, and those hidden were shocked as well. What did this mean? Damn, this Wang Zheng was running away, and looking for an excuse to surrender. But nobody dared to act hastily. Because whoever moved now would be the next target after Wang Zheng. The second person would attract a lot of hate, but the third, that would be better. Besides, this Zhang Zun looked much easier to deal with. All eyes were locked on Zhang Zun. He abruptly nodded. He retreated a step, looking especially serious. Only those who actually trained in the physical techniques could see the truth of Wang Zheng's battles. A majority thought it was Ability X and his terrifying hybrid abilities. But Zhang Zun knew that Ability X was not the key to victory, but the prodigious physical abilities that had seen him through from start to finish of every battle. The amazing spinning move that had finished off Mars had stemmed from stunning physical ability. Anyone who trained in the physical arts would want to challenge that. They could not help their attraction. Roar! Zhang Zun's body suddenly transformed, like an animal's. His eyes burned with fury. As a fighter, he had longed to test Wang Zheng's power for himself for too long. Exactly what was that mysterious level capable of bringing? Zhang Zun was in full concentration. His arms were in front of his chest, in a locked position. No matter how powerful Wang Zheng's punch, he could take it. Spirit, body, and mind, as one. Wang Zheng smiled slightly. Not bad. He at least understood why Zhang Zun thirsted for this battle with him. He entered a calm, impenetrable state. That feeling was like hell. He had seen his performance at the Greatest King competition, and thought to test it here. Only, what a time to pick. Wang Zheng stepped out and suddenly took off. His fist flew out. Just then, someone had already trained their laser gun from the shadows. With enough people, all kinds of things would be tried. Evidently, some people were apprehensive, others less so. Finish off Wang Zheng. Regardless of the outcome, you would become famous overnight. That was enough. Elimination, so be it. Only, given Wang Zheng's skills, a missed shot could pose a huge danger. Waiting for him to unleash his full power blow would be the opportune moment to strike. Just as Wang Zheng's punch was flying full force towards the defending Zhang Zun, and was about to close, a gunshot rang from the woods. A quick calculation. If Wang Zheng hit Zhang Zun, he would definitely be hit by the laser. Blocking laser with flesh was a nightmare. This shot was aimed for Wang Zheng's temple. Sure kill. Given Wang Zheng's skills, he could pull out of the blow. But then he would be going back on their agreement, and turn into a joke. Everyone smiled snidely. They had thought that Wang Zheng was some amazing figure, but this was his limit. He took one greatest king and was already this aggressive. It did not matter that he had tried to show off, but now he would pay the price. This was the reason why the top 10 seeded team captains had been low profile, and even formed alliances. Victory was king. Boom. With a loud bang, Zhang Zun was sent flying more than 10 meters. Rumble, the trees in the way had been cleaned out as well. And Wang Zheng, after delivering the blow, had vanished into the forest. 3 seconds later, an anguished wail sounded to the skies. A light rustle shook the woods. After a while, Wang Zheng walked back out. In his hand was a hand. And that hand held a tag. Returning to the bonfire, Wang Zheng threw the hand and tag to the side and quietly awaited the next opponent. Only, the woods were silent. All the spectators were clear that Wang Zheng's punch had not connected with Zhang Zun. An indirect punch alone had sent Zhang Zun flying. What ability was this? Ability X. Although Ability X could be categorized by metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, that was the solar system's ancient way. Now, controlling, strengthening, liberating, special types were the categories favored. External application types might only be average for a mecha warrior, but were extremely powerful in close combat. But, Wang Zheng's ability X was inhibited. How could he produce such power? The most crucial was that snipe. Had he been forewarned, or was it coincidence? And the hand beside the bonfire was even more horrifying. And the precious tag had been carelessly thrown on the ground. Footsteps sounded, and panicked ones. It was Zhang Zun, returning. Wang Zheng was a little surprised. This punk didn't know what was good for him. If he had not left him some space before the punch, he would not even be standing. Wang Zheng's principle for this battle was to respond accordingly. The opponent had come to test his strength, so he would comply. If the opponent had killing intent, he would return a tooth for a tooth. And for the sniper, he would not give them a second chance. Zhang Zun clutched his chest and walked back. Given his ability, he knew that Wang Zheng had pulled his punch. He was of a completely different level. His whole body was thrumming with pain, but it could not quench the frenzied fire in Zhang Zun's eyes. This was power, even more power than his own mentor. Someone younger than him had actually reached such a level. Physical technique and ability X, both mastered. Zhang Zun looked at the hand and tag on the floor without any surprise. He respectfully took his own tag out and laid it on the floor. Wang Zheng waved it away. Take it. I don't lack people coming to die. Arrogance. Confidence. A small matter. Wang Zheng had just discovered a feeling. He wished that the ignorant ones could feel Kashan's stifling control more, could feel the oppressive principles that this society was built on. Wang Zheng needed some release. Zhang Zun smiled bitterly. Even if Wang Zheng did not want it, he could not protect it. He dared to say that he would be dead before he walked 10 meters. Wang Zheng seemed to have grasped his dilemma. I could use someone to tidy up. It's going to get messy in a while. If you're not afraid of dying, how about staying? When Zhang Zun heard this, he smiled excitedly. He kept his tag and sat down on the side. Facing off against such an expert was of immense help to his growth. That punch had given Zhang Zun inspiration. It was just a pity that his senses were too poor to make use of that feeling. Seeing the number on the tag, Zhang Zun started. It's Earthworm Federation's Stowl. Earthworm Federation was no weakling. In the group, they ranked about 50. But Stowl had not even held up to one move from Wang Zheng. Stowl's neck was already disfigured. Zhang Zun could feel that Wang Zheng had his bloodthirst under control. Any danger or attack could rouse his savage response. A terrifying aura caged Wang Zheng. Zhang Zun clearly felt a chilling tremble. Wang Zheng was waiting for the pros to come. Anyone who coveted Aina was really asking for it. Wang Zheng was quietly waiting, but a portion of the concealed people had stealthily retreated. It was clear that Wang Zheng had displayed top-class ability. First-rate ability X, first-rate physical technique. Unless those hidden came to some agreement, whoever went up would die, or end up like Zhang Zun. and they could not make deals unless enough of them held a grudge. Many turned elsewhere to seek their fortunes. Wang Zheng did not ease up. He knew that the Aslan people would come, as well as Arbiter's soulless battle team, and that Manalasuo Guy. Of course, this was the best-case scenario. Atlantis, and even others might come. That was why he had to prepare himself. Wang Zheng quietly stoked his campfire, even while he circulated primordial regression technique within his body. Zhang Zun suppressed the roiling energy within his body. He looked at Wang Zheng. A complete set of attack and defense, and yet his expression had not even changed. That body was truly a beast. Of course, he knew that it was them who had not applied enough pressure. But as he knew, anybody had their specializations. He tended towards physical skills, while others tended towards ability X. Wang Zheng. Earth rank ability X needed no further evaluation. But Zhang Zun was more caught up with Wang Zheng's prodigious physical ability. He was not only internally refined, but his attack style spoke of volumes of foundation, as though he had been refined in a crucible. How did he achieve that? Wang Zheng, sitting beside the campfire, was a profound mystery. A wave of dense pressure enveloped Zhang Zun. He was breathless, and about to pass out. His wounds were reacting as well. Suddenly, Wang Zheng laughed, and the pressure vanished. Sorry, my mind wandered. Wang Zheng had been deep in thought and subconsciously let his aura free. At this distance, it was not something that a wounded Zhang Zun could withstand. I've been to Northern Star before. I feel an affinity with the place. Zhang Zun started. He had met pros, especially those that clearly stood at the top like Wang Zheng. All of them had their eyes cast far. Aslan's leader would give the barest of nods as a greeting. In his heart, he had thought that the greatest King Wang Zheng would definitely be very arrogant, but... You've been to Northern Star? Yes. A very deep impression. A long history and brave warriors. Wang Zheng smiled. Your technique is called the heaven-raising iron body, right? Who did you learn it from? My mentor. My mentor is from Earth, and this set of skills revolves around defensive counterattacks. Teacher said it was the king of defense. At this point, Zhang Zun's face reddened. Damn, what king of defense? He had been shattered by just one punch from this guy. Wang Zheng smiled. Your skills are not bad, and I think within the earth element. A pity that your ability X is not of the same complementary level, and it lacks power. My ability X is a physical strengthener. Isn't that good when paired with martial arts? Zhang Zun was beside himself with joy. He knew that this was a very rare opportunity. Those that knew ability X did not always know martial arts, and vice versa. And even those who were proficient in both might not prioritize their combination. And Zhang Zun believed that Wang Zheng was the rare specialist of this, and was even stronger than some mentors. The rise of physical power had come in the last few years, suddenly blossoming. Although many had trained it in the past, they were used to strengthening the body, and those obsessed with ability X were the majority. Strengthening power is external, while martial arts are from within. You could even call them inner arts. Feedback to the muscles is the most fundamental aspect, but the core is the unifying of spirit, mind and body. The earth element is a better fit for your arts, it will allow you to unify your energy. If you train it well, once you use it, your opponent will be a goner. Wang Zheng said. The guy's arts were not complex, belonging to the 16-tier level. From what Wang Zheng could analyze, although he was not completely clear, he could surmise the general direction. This was a complete outclass. The main use of the bracelet was to inhibit mental energy and connection to the greater world. Of course, this process would cause some interference to mental energy. This was different from Maklu, and this detail proved it. Aslan's ability X research was astounding, and Maklu was not as all-knowing. As for Wang Zheng's mental energy, at a certain level, it could not be stopped. Zhang Zun was lost in thought. But the thing known as ability X, it was not as simple as one's wish. Your affinity should be of Earth. You can find similar people after the battle and feel it for yourself. You should feel the benefits, Wang Zheng said. Zhang Zun nodded. He was full of gratitude. He had seen the way that Wang Zheng could act cruelly and decisively, but he treated him so well. He did not know how good his luck was. All he could say was that Wang Zheng was someone who knew how to read good and bad. Wang Jung had already surveyed his surroundings. This had already become a habitual instinct. To normal fighters, this might be a burden, but at Wang Jung's level, it was a basic skill. Wang Jung had named this technique perimeter. Within his perimeter, any stirring, especially of unknown auras entering, would immediately be felt. And he was even more sensitive to bloodthirst. Some battle skills were suited for competition, while such battle techniques were extremely practical. Zhang Zun could not discern it. He only admired Wang Jung's composure. In his shoes, he would be squirming with uneasiness. The members on Island B were not as calm as their leaders. With numbers, and a disparity in battle ability, any contact basically resulted in a big battle. Night did not bring calm, but instead intensified the situation. Mu Zhen had already known his error all too well. He had taken a laser hit and his left arm had been pierced through. Mu Zhen had entered the forest. Compared to the rich vital force on Titatitan Star, this planet was too weak and barren. That was why he did not really like the feel of this place. Behind Mu Zhen, there were two pursuers. Night fell. They were even saying that Mu Zhen could run but not hide. His huge figure was a liability at this time. Of course, just as Mu Zhen was preparing to turn and make a stand, anguished cries sounded from behind him. In the night, countless pairs of eyes emerged. The cyborg Zergs had been released. Achilles and Lai Xin had good luck. They had actually met by accident. By combining their powers, they would be a match even for members from seeded teams. In truth, they already held 3 tags. And now they were searching for the other members as best they could. On the first day, Saruman Snake's luck was not too good. Snowly had been eliminated. Snipers did not do well in such survival environments. Once they were found, they were doomed, especially since there were scouts that specialized in finding their targets. After each chaotic battle, the snipers' elimination rate was the highest. Zhang Shan had hidden himself. It would be dumb to do otherwise. Although student Zhang Shan was hot-headed, his ability to hide was meticulous. Of course, his closeting in the wormhole back in IG had been godlike. When it was time to endure, Zhang Shan did not shy away. The cyborg Zergs were here. The damn things were even harder to deal with than Zergs, combining mechanics with the Zergs' own biological burrowing ability. If he still had ability X, Zhang Shan would not mind testing these things. But now it was best to hide honestly. Coveting others' tags was useless. As for physical ability, Zhang Shan had some confidence in his abilities, but his physique was more suited to mech battles. A flesh and steel fight was difficult. A good physique did not always mean that mecha operation was good. At the same time, good mecha operation did not mean that one's physique was awesome. Although the two did share much in common. Zhang Shan's best trait was that he knew his limits. Zhang Shan had already dug a pit and buried himself. He had even put a stone on top, and his camouflage had been done decently. 2 people had passed and missed him. His training and experience had come in useful. He was not too pressured by this environment. Each extreme challenge brought growth to him. There would definitely be opportunities, because this was just the start. As time passed, others would be injured, while food, stamina, and other aspects would start to lag. In such challenges, it did not matter how strong you were. More important was how you observed and analyzed. SIG was not about battle machines, or these cyborg Zergs would be enough. The niche that human soldiers offered was intellect. Zhang Shan decided to take a nap. The other one who had decided to take a nap was Luo Fei. But this time, Luo Fei was not sleeping. Lear need not worry about himself. Given student Lear's personality, if he did not come bothering you, you could count yourself lucky. If others wanted to cross him, it would be their own end. But Lear's aims were not just that. Saruman Snake was basically finished, but to Lear, that meant FCK all. The Dynasty battle team still needed battle results to prove themselves. Lear was not as shallow to think that his opponent's failure equaled his success. From a broader perspective, the solar system had to emerge. Now that Wang Jung was finished, then he needed to stand out all the more. At this time, the effect of being outstanding would far surpass any time in the past. The light of 2 stars was not as bright as a single one. Luo Fei was unquestionably thinking of skiving off. The Dynasty Battle team had brought a few reserves that were not at all reserved. Their physical abilities were tremendous, and Fatty could feel the power roiling off them. Like that, the Dynasty Battle team was stable. As long as no one lost their heads and went to challenge the elites. It was just that, before they parted, Lear had looked at Luo Fei and said something to him that quailed Fatty's heart. 10 tags. This was what Lear had asked of Luo Fei. 10 tags was not the main point. Given his normal abilities, taking 10 tags was very dangerous, but given Luo Fei's true ability, 10 tags was easy peasy. Even on the Lida's Island A, Fatty Luo Fei could still hold his own with the best. What had Lear seen? Fatty did not know, nor could guess. He had hidden it very well all the while. He did not have to try hard, because the state was not stable. Fatty had never thought of it as who he truly was, and in that state, his manner was completely different. Fatty had often suspected that he had multiple personality disorder, and had even been to the hospital to check it out. But the doctor said that his physical and mental conditions were in the prime of health. Although he looked tubby, strangely, his fat held great stores of vitality. So much so that the doctor wanted to cut him up and investigate. Fatty had scampered away in fright. He was scared of even drawing blood, let alone surgery. Stumped, Fatty was too lazy to think more about it. Boss had ordered, so it had to be done. He was clear on this. Lear did not care about the process, only the result. Things like attitude did not matter. Fatty irritably crawled out. He threw away the grass on his head. The first day was not a good time, but he still decided to try his luck and get warmed up. Boom! A laser shot narrowly missed Fatty's ear. His head had almost exploded. FCK. Fatty cursed. He immediately burrowed into the forest, and the laser shots were still firing from behind him. There were at least 3. FCK. Just as he was about to get serious, he had almost been headshotted. What luck! Quick! Chase! Don't let that damned Fatty get away! From behind, all 3 were eager with joy. They had sensed that things were off in this area, and who would have known that such a bounty would fall into their laps? Seeing someone of this stature was a free kill every time. If it had been in the past, Luo Fei would have been a pig that could only fly, but today he would not. The Ares art allowed Fatty see clearly even in the night. All he had to do was channel his art to his eyes. This was impossible many physical technique practitioners, but it was easy for Fatty. Fatty stealthily circled behind. There was one straggler. A sudden lunge, and his knife plunged into a neck. Immediately, a hand clamped over the victim's mouth, and he dragged him into the pitch-black copse. The other 2 suddenly halted. Where's Thrall? Damn, might be a trap, let's bail. Both speedily left without a second thought for their teammate. Fatty had no intention of letting them. He held a tag in his hand. Such a level was too low. Perhaps these people were excellent with mecha, but their close combat level was too average. They must have trained in martial arts before, and their bodies were strong, but could not hold a candle to those who actually used it. The difference in fighting ability was disgusting. The cyborg Zerg's appearance had added difficulty to the situation. Some members were already engaged in clashes with the cyborg Zergs. These Zergs were obviously not as good as Abyss Zergs, but they were more agile than average Zergs. Luckily, they were Model C. If they were Model B, then even these warriors would suffer grave wounds, given that their ability X's were inhibited. They had no idea what Aslan was up to. Fatty was not bothered with all that. He had been dormant, but the moment he started moving, his hands were itchy. In truth, Fatty's abilities on Island B was the real boss. Along the way, he had already slain 7 cyborg Zergs. These critters were savage, and extremely strong. The last 2 had been quite tiring. Luo Fei did not really like killing people, but he had no qualms with killing worms. If only worms also had tags. Fatty's movements also had a perimeter similar to Wang Zheng's. Fatty did not exert himself much in his movements. He was not the violent type. He would use the most economical way to finish off his opponent. If he missed, he would be a mile away instantly. If you talked about who Wang Zheng was most unwilling to face in the woods, it was not Lear, but Luo Fei. Whether Lear would be hurt, no one knew. Wang Zheng was surrounded by worms. 11 cyborg zergs had been attracted by the firelight. Zhang Zun had already stood up, awaiting them in stance. He wanted to remind Wang Zheng to put the fire out, but he held his tongue. Given Wang Zheng's ability, he could not possibly not know. But now, what were they to do? 11 huge cyborg zergs had surrounded them. Truthfully, seeing these huge zergs bare their fangs and claws, even warriors like Zhang Zun felt a chill. Especially when he was injured, he felt even more helpless. If he was in an uninjured condition, he had the confidence to take on one. But now, Wang Zheng unhurriedly threw the firewood in, then stood up. The zergs slowly crowded in. If they were normal zergs, they would have surged up together, but the cyborg zergs had computer chip controls. 11 zergs formed into a corralling formation. 2 were targeting Zhang Zun, while the other 9 were on Wang Zheng. In a beautiful room at Monte Ellis, the Yang family's manor. 4 girls were currently staring at the scene, open-mouthed. Yang Ruoliu was very excited. Let him strut. He'll have to run this time, but he can't. Better activate the defensive shield to protect himself. Ruoliu, how long can this energy shield last? Dong asked a crucial question. Even if activated, the paramedics might not arrive in time. Yang Ruoliu shrugged. I'm afraid it won't last very long. The best bet would be to open shields and run. Qian Shuidi licked her lollipop. Too late. Besides, there are wounded. Wei Yan's gaze was completely trained on Wang Zheng, who did not seem panicked or anxious. Hey, aren't you worried for your brother-in-law? Yang Ruoliu joked. How to say this? As traditional Aslan royalty, although it was defiant, they could admire Wang Zheng's guts. But, Wang Zheng had gone a little overboard. Although he was young, the education that they had received was on a completely different level from commoners. You don't understand him, Wei Yan softly said. At this moment, Wang Zheng stood up and charged towards the zergs. Zhang Zun extended a hand. He was already prepared to run, and his hand was gripping his bracelet, ready to activate it at any time. This was no game. Time to pull out. He believed that if Wang Zheng had his ability X, even without G material and mecha, he could still triumph over these zergs. But with physical technique alone. The 2 zergs that had targeted Zhang Zun also turned towards Wang Zheng. Countless sharp claws flashed out, and the gleam told all. Their claws were titanium hardened. In order to deal with the savagery of the Abyss zergs, these were completely different from normal zergs. They did not consider their own defense. Their offensive capabilities had to be enhanced. Forget flesh, even iron would be shredded like tofu. Wang Zheng seemed stunned. He stood unmoving. The 11 zergs were all over the place, filling both land and air. Zhang Zun's jaw dropped. One concealed person was watching on silently, because he had attracted these worms over. First, he would wear Wang Zheng out. Even if Wang Zheng escaped, he could test his drive. But this guy seemed even more moronic than he had imagined. From the monitoring room, the generals were taking turns to observe, with at least 3 at all times. Manilasuo's General Bolette was present. He was filled with curiosity about Wang Zheng from the start of the last IG. All these years, he had kept an ear out for news of Wang Zheng, including his performance at Elite Academy X. At this SIG, the main reason he had come personally was to see Wang Zheng. Many times, he had wished that Wang Zheng was of Manilasuo. He exuded the leadership qualities that Manilasuo needed to reach the top. But these cyborg zergs were very strong. Without ability X, how could he break through them?